SOS! They're taking us! I hope that this is not just a cry for help, but that we can alert everyone who's going through this abduction process. Many abductees are placed under a hypnosis process, a type of memory suspension, so that there is no memory of these attacks when people are taken from their homes after the experiments and manipulations.
Leon kept showing me all those incredible things in his plasma and mentally giving me a galactic history lesson while my body continued to rest and sleep. He told me that, after the problem caused by the reptilians and the Dracos in an attempt to control the Greys through reverse technology, the program was triggered by frequency, like a wave that was passed on by resonance, to all experiences that had the nanotechnology in their DNA, and that communicated through the process of collective consciousness. The program was infallible, and like a virus, it woke up and spread silently inside each one of them. In a short time, the reproduction of these races dropped drastically, and each group tried to solve this in their own way, given that the Greys had not programmed an antiviral, in case they wanted to reverse, or at least stabilize the situation. Each race, with its capabilities and technologies, then began a reproductive process through cloning, but so many changes have taken place in the last millennia that this has ended up affecting their biological constitution and their neural network, making it difficult to transfer their consciousness to these bodies, which are like biological robots or avatars. For a long time, they used these cloned bodies as biotech robots to transit between universes, but with each jump in space-time, they began to feel the collapse and degradation of their clones. As the pilots and their crafts were a single structure, in a symbiotic process, piloted by mental command, the crafts began to have problems during the space-time jumps, damaging them, and some even falling, as happened in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, and Ekaterinburg, Russia. With the decrease in the offspring of each race, and so many incidents and complications in the clones, those involved decided to arrange a moment of truce between them to solve the problem or create a cure for the viral program, because this dragged on for a long time, and the clones no longer brought all the capabilities of their pure races, far from it. The Dracos turned to the Greys to solve the problem, and informed them that the programming was a self-protection system established by their scientists when they created the technology, so that they would not serve as food or be slaves of any race, even though they knew they could be affected by this trap as well, because they were in the same situation. They no longer reproduced as before, and their populations only decreased. The lifespan was also affected, and there were no more resources to roll back the program if it wasn't for the manipulation of the DNA of a pure race, without outside interference that had not yet been contaminated, and served for the project of restructuring their races. The solution would be to join forces with the enemies. The Dracos then met with their Senate. As they could not warn that they still did not have an immediate solution, and that they would be in the hands of their traitors, they asked for a meeting with the Greys, and then opened a channel of communication, which took place through holographic technology. A representative of the Draco Senate participated, and the Greys informed that there would be no more exchange of technologies and partnerships, as they did not offer anything greater or different than what they had already obtained during centuries of work and experience. Before ending the communication, they also informed that they discovered that they were being betrayed and manipulated. Since then, there has been a war against the control of the reptilians and the Dracos, who ended up increasing their abilities to transit in the minds of the Greys, as a type of control and mental possession, taking over the neural network, not only of an individual, but of a group of Greys who communicate in a mind network. For a period of time, the Dracos controlled and submitted any race or group to their domain, and the strongest targets were the races that communicated through collective consciousness, like the Greys. The Greys were certain that there would be another betrayal on the part of the Dracos and reptilians, and knowing that they would not fulfill the agreement not to use their technologies, and that they would not put them in the position of servants, they ended up signing agreements, but with each group creating their own factions, one infiltrating the other, like agents running a project that could fix a problem of their own making. So they started to map the systems where there could be lives that would harbor the experiment, which should happen through a type of hybridization. With that, some wars were fought in places unimaginable by us Earthlings. These wars lasted thousands of years until they began to send observation probes to our system, because there was a primitive race here in development, and that gave possibilities of succeeding if they could manifest in the DNA of this people their characteristics and genetic information, creating a hybrid with a part of its genome without contaminating the body of these primates, so as not to lose the ability to procreate. That's when they began to observe that these primitive human mammals, belonging to the third planet of this system, still walked crouching and rarely ventured to walk on their legs. They were very late in the process of conscientious experience and did not have a developed brain. All those involved, Greys and reptilians, were very disheartened, and at first there was no agreement. They didn't want to use such primitive beings because they were worried that something could happen, leading them to live in the primitive human experience because of the pull of the Earth's incarnation law. Everyone was worried because the planet had established a magnetic field so strong that beyond imprisoning, it forced everyone who had the death of the biological body within the earthly dome to enter the reincarnation wheel in the cycle of the human primates. They started tracking and sending probes everywhere, but whenever they discovered a race, they were also advanced and already knew the problems they were facing, and wars happened so that they were not used or served as an experiment. Many wars took place to try to solve the big problem they got themselves into. Then, over time, they returned to our solar system, watched us, and realized that there were no significant changes in the process of primate evolution. They abducted some primates and studied their DNA, and saw in them a potential capacity for the project. Then there was the concern of manifesting small genetic changes in their bodies, but without contaminating them with any technology. At first, the objective was to give the least possibility for these people to develop the primate brain. They would also need to decimate a number of predators on the planet who saw them as food, because at the same time, primate men and some dinosaurs lived here, and the amount of predatory species was enormous, which made the experiment impossible, as some lost their lives when went out to hunt, and with that, the groups of this population usually lived for a short time. Dracos, reptilians, and Greys began to decimate these predators that could not only destroy the process, but were also attacking the Greys who were mapping the primates when they landed in their small crafts. Primates were abducted by the Greys and taken to their laboratories, and like animals, they were put to sleep through a wave induction procedure that caused deep sleep. They were studied inside the crafts that docked on the moon. What happened during the experiments is that the human primates were getting sick very fast and were dying still inside the laboratories. They were being affected by a type of virus that caused the paralysis of their nerves and the rupture of some internal organs, causing hemorrhages and leading them to death. Then the Greys began to understand that they were host to a type of virus that affected primate humans. They then stopped the project and started trying to find a way not to contaminate them, creating a type of antibody that could be introduced into their bodies to prevent a pandemic collapse, which would wipe out the entire race of human primates. They stayed for a while taking some human primates and applying in their bodies some types of vaccines that could increase the antibodies without compromising the pure humanoid genetic root of this people. It took a few attempts until they managed to separate a mutated strain of the virus in the laboratory from one of the human primates that had survived longer than the others. They began to look for the family of this human primate, which had 2 more descendants in its family group and had a type of cellular mutation induced by the natural process. Nature itself created mutations in this group, developing in them a slightly larger brain and the ability to walk like bipeds. These began to develop into leaders, like animals that take care of their flock, maintaining control, living in greater numbers, staying longer in the same territory, using the caves, and starting small tribes. They had a greater capacity for observation, different from the others. When they were taken to the laboratories, the vaccine created was able to introduce the antibodies, but something else changed internally, ending a disease that affected them, which degenerated their liver tissue. With that, the agents and scientists involved were surprised by what happened, but what they didn't realize is that there was, somehow, an intervention from another dimension that was already observing these primates, and that changed the ethereal structure of this group of humans. These primate humans were helped to start using fire as one of their survival tools. To be continued.